After months of grinding stalemate, the war entered its final, brutal chapter. General Philip Sheridan was on a mission in the Shenandoah Valley, crushed the Confederate forces under Jubal Early. At the Battle of 3rd Winchester, Sheridan's larger army overwhelmed Early's men, forcing them into a desperate retreat. Early fell back to Fisher's Hill, a natural fortress he hoped would give his battered army a chance to regroup. But Sheridan gave him no time. A surprise flank attack sent the Confederates reeling once more. With Early on the run, the Union began the burning, a systematic campaign to destroy the valley's resources, cutting off the breadbasket of the Confederacy. Meanwhile, General William T. Sherman unleashed his own brand of total war. He led 62,000 men on his infamous march to the sea, carving a path of destruction across Georgia. His goal wasn't just to cripple supply lines, but to break the Southern will to fight. Railroads were torn up, farms burned, and telegraph lines dismantled. When Sherman reached Savannah, he captured the city and famously presented it to President Lincoln as a Christmas gift. As 1864 ended, the Confederacy was exhausted. In Tennessee, General Hood's army was shattered at the Battle of Nashville. The end seemed near, but the bloodiest fighting was yet to come. The new year began with a renewed assault on North Carolina and the vital Confederate stronghold of Fort Fisher. An earlier attempt had failed, but this time, the Union brought overwhelming force. A massive naval fleet under Admiral David Porter pounded the fort, while ground troops stormed its walls. After vicious hand-to-hand combat, the fort fell. This was a devastating blow. With Fort Fisher gone, Wilmington, the last major Confederate seaport on the Atlantic, was doomed. With the Confederacy collapsing, Sherman marched north into the Carolinas, leaving a trail of destruction. Columbia, South Carolina, went up in flames. A catastrophe Sherman didn't order, but also didn't mourn, believing it hastened the war's end. Fayetteville, North Carolina, fell next. It was here, as Sherman's army advanced toward Bentonville, that the South decided to make one last, desperate stand. Confederate President Jefferson Davis, at the urging of Robert E. Lee, put General Joseph E. Johnston back in command. Johnston scraped together every available man, preparing for a final showdown. As the war raged, Abraham Lincoln delivered his second inaugural address. Standing in the rain-soaked Capitol, he spoke of healing and reconciliation. But even in the hopeful crowd, darkness lingered. John Wilkes Booth was present, later boasting he could have killed the president that day. The abolitionist Frederick Douglass would later recall, "There was murder in Thier, back on the front lines." Hannibal Robert E. Lee, desperate to break the siege of Petersburg, approved a daring higher-risk plan. General John B. Gordon proposed a surprise night attack on a Union position known as Fort Stedman. If they could break through, they might be able to disrupt Grant's supply lines and buy the Confederacy precious time. Gordon assembled a small group of soldiers who would pretend to be deserting Union troops. As they approached the Union lines, their commander shouted after them, "Oh boys, come back, don't go." It was a brilliant piece of theater. The deception worked. In the pre-dawn darkness, Gordon's men swarmed Fort Stedman. The Union defenders, caught completely by surprise, were overwhelmed in minutes. Gordon himself entered the captured fort, personally accepting the Union commander's surrender. For a fleeting moment, it seemed the Confederacy had pulled off a miracle. Flush with victory, the Confederates pushed on towards the neighboring forts Haskell and McGillivray, but their luck had run out. The defenders of Fort Haskell were awake and ready. They met the attackers with a hail of gunfire. At Fort McGillivray, the Confederate charge was met with a slaughter. As daylight broke, Gordon realized his plan was falling apart. The element of surprise was gone. His men were trapped in Fort Stedman, surrounded by Union forces on all sides. Low on ammunition and taking heavy fire, Gordon had no choice but to order a retreat. The escape became a massacre. Union artillery pounded the fleeing Confederates, turning the field into what one soldier called a place of fearful slaughter. Over 2,600 men were lost. The disaster at Fort Stedman was the final nail in the coffin for the defense of Petersburg and Richmond. Lee knew he could no longer hold the lines. He made the agonizing decision to abandon both cities. The fall of the Confederate capital sent shockwaves across the South. Lee's plan was to march his army south to link up with General Johnston in North Carolina, but Union forces were closing in from all sides. His army was starving, exhausted, and shrinking daily as soldiers deserted. Cornered and desperate, Lee decided on one final, audacious gamble. He ordered General Gordon to launch a last-ditch attack at a small village called Appomattox Courthouse. Just like at Fort Stedman, Gordon's initial assault was shockingly successful. His men smashed through the Union cavalry blocking their path, but their victory was short-lived. Behind the cavalry were two entire corps of Union infantry. The tide turned instantly. When Lee heard the news, he knew it was over. "There is nothing left for me to do," he said, "but to go and see General Grant. And I would rather die 1,000 deaths. But surrender, not death." was his only option. On April 9, 1865, inside the home of a man named Wilmer McLean, the two greatest generals of the war, Ulysses S. Grant and Robert E. Lee, sat down face to face. After a brief, polite conversation they had met once before, during the Mexican-American War, they got down to business. Grant offered generous terms. Confederate soldiers would be pardoned and allowed to keep their horses. He even offered to send food to Lee's starving army. Lee accepted. When Union troops began to cheer, Grant ordered them to stop. "The war is over," he told them. "The rebels are our countrymen again." Though small skirmishes continued for a few more weeks, the surrender at Appomattox marked the effective end of the Confederacy. General Johnston surrendered on April 26. The last major Confederate army surrendered on May 26. The bloodiest war in American history was over. The cost was staggering. Nearly 1.5 million lives lost, including soldiers, civilians, and enslaved people who died from war-related causes. A nation was shattered, then reborn through fire. It was the world's first modern war, with rifled muskets, ironclad ships, and trench warfare unleashing violence on an unimaginable scale. Before the war, people often said, "The United States are." After, it was always singular. The United States is a fractured collection of states had become one, indivisible nation. The healing would take generations, but unity had, at long last, prevailed. Thank you for watching. Your support on Patreon and through YouTube memberships makes these videos possible. We'll see you next time.